And we are live with our 48th episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter. We are doing. Sorry, give me one sec. You know what I did, Seth, right? I don't even have to say it.
Yep, I do.
Yeah. Kevin Cody was just saying how I haven't messed up the volume piece there in a bit, and I just did it. It's because it's early. And by the way, yes, we're here early today. This is for our special guest joining us from a completely different time zone. But anyways, so I'm joined by my co-host, Seth Law, at Seth Law on Twitter. Seth, say hi.
Hey, everybody. Welcome once again to Absolute AppSec. 48 episodes in. We're excited to have Omer on today. Shifting times a little bit to make sure that everybody could make it. But I think it's going to be a good episode talking Kubernetes security and all the things, right? As usual. As far as kind of logistical announcements, I don't think there's much on our end that we need to go over right now, Ken. There's a couple of training courses and things like that are in the works. As always, I was at B-Side Salt Lake City, gave out a bunch of Absolute AppSec swag and stuff like that. So hopefully we've got a couple new listeners that are jumping in from that. And as always, you can join our Slack channel. Go to absoluteappsec.com. There's a link there that'll let you into Slack. Or if you feel like you want to interact with us in some way, that would be great. Otherwise, right, come find us if you need some, Absolute AppSec sticker or something like that. We'll kind of give you. We've got a bunch of them. I just ordered a new set. So, Ken, anything else?
While you were saying that, I was trying to think of something, but no, I don't have anything.
You can't make anything up right now. Is that what you're saying?
No, yeah, nothing. I guess the only thing to say is, Seth, are you going to be at Mocha SEC, or is it just?
It's up in the air right now for me. I'm not sure. It kind of depends on the other stuff if it gets accepted for us. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah. No, I know I am going to be at Mocha SEC. So that'll be in April. May is up in the air. But yeah, I think we got, at least I'll be at Mocha SEC for sure. Should we get into the AppSec Minute before we introduce Omer? And I'm so focused on pronouncing his name correctly that I'm like, I'm spitting myself up about it, because I don't want to butcher his name. Anyways, should we get into the AppSec Minute then?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, cool. I mean, I figured we'd talk about the .dev TLD, top level domain. Just a short history before we get into what Jerry Camplin did, which is pretty funny. Short history is in 2014, I think it was 2014, that domain was registered like part of ICANN. It was .dev was a domain registered, but it wasn't actually really used or a problem in the sense of, to explain that thought, when you set up a local development environment, so like, let's say you wrote a web application and you run it locally, or you run several web applications and you run them locally. Usually what used to happen is you would try to emulate as best as you can production. So you've got like myapp.dev that you would navigate to locally. It would hit the web app that you've spun up running on your machine locally, never go out to the internet, no reason. No reason to resolve that DNS entry. It would just say, hey, .dev means local. So a lot of people would set up Nginx on their local machines to resolve .dev domains, especially useful when you have like a few different apps where you've got like an SSO client and an SSO provider, for instance, running on your box. You can flip between these different websites and use that .dev top level domain. 2017, I think it was became a real problem in 2017 of November maybe, or something like that. But I know it was in July of 2017, there were blog articles about like, hey, just so you know, you're not going to be able to use .dev anymore. And the reason for that was Google. So if you tried to resolve to .dev, you'd actually, your DNS record would say, oh, let me go call out to the internet, see where .dev lives and precedent would be given to that DNS entry outside of your local machine. So that broke a bunch of development environments. I think POW, which is what I used to use, POW simplifies, like if you're using Rails apps and you want to do that .tev, POW would simplify that whole process. I think they had to move to .test instead. And it broke a lot of people's development environments. So as of 2019, very recently in the last few weeks, you're able to begin registering for .dev domains. And that leads us to Seth, if you want to discuss a little bit about what Jerry did, which was pretty funny. I think it was yesterday he announced it or did it, or both.
Yeah, he announced it, I think, actually just this morning on Twitter. He actually he registered it yesterday. So he registered the domain internal.dev, right? So all of these developer workstations that have been set up to go to localhost, right? Or if they don't resolve, they don't have some sort of master DNS record that forces that to go to localhost, means that all of those requests are now spinning to Jerry's server is basically what it boils down to. I'm not sure what he's backed it with. I haven't even gone to it yet. It just cracked me up that he had gone and registered that, because we know the way the developers follow those patterns, that they always use specific domain names, right? And it's usually codified in some sort of development documentation that, hey, when you're developing local, you're not going to use localhost, you use internal.dev, or you use, mysite.dev, something along those lines, because it doesn't resolve. That was the whole point of using those domains in the past. Google came out and told people that they were going to start, resolving, but now that they actually are, Jerry's snagged basically one of the most used development domains by virtue of the development process. And I'm really interested to see what will happen there. Omer, for your background, if you don't know, Jerry's he's been on a couple of times on the show. He used to work at Carfax, but he's in the security field. He does AppSec stuff with us as well. But it'll be interesting to actually see what the fallout of this is, right?
He had mentioned predicting that possibly CI systems would break or something along those lines. So yeah, it'll be curious. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm curious.
So what I'm doing right now, I'm trying to find on github.com. Your search foo and on GitHub is probably better than mine. Trying to figure out how many references to internal.dev there are just in public, github.com.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah.
Anyway.
So, yeah, I don't want to get too, but yeah, I actually am interested now.
So the recommendation from an AppSec Minute perspective is you need to know what you're pointing at, even when you're in development and staging environments, right? Rather than, just trusting that some domain that you come up with, right, never will resolve. I mean, way back in the day, I used to see people use localhost.com as well. Right, that was a very common one that came up, and then they would put in internal host entries in their local machines, which will work even with internal.dev. If you actually set up your host file properly and it looks up in the host file first for that, it'll still resolve locally. But in the case that you forget to do that, it's going to go to Jerry's server at this point or somewhere else. And even localhost.com, that was always a common one that happened. So anytime that you're trusting the DNS system to make that resolution for you, there can be problems and there can be lookups that you don't intend, right?
For sure. Yeah, it should be interesting to see what happens. Somebody had mentioned registering for email with that domain, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So I guess we should probably introduce our guest, and we've got a lot of watchers right now, by the way. Maybe this time slot's a better time slot. We might have to put out a poll, see if this time works better for people. But anyways, so our guest today is, I'm going to try and not butcher this. I apologize if I do. Omer Levi Hevroni from Israel, and who works at Soluto. Is that correct, Omer?
Yes. So first, thank you for having me, and thank you for doing it early for me. It's pretty late here, so thank you for finding the time. Yes, so I'm working at Soluto. Soluto is an R&D center for Assurance, a big US company in Tel Aviv. So yes, that's correct.
Awesome. Well, no, thanks for joining us. We appreciate having you on. And to go into a little bit about Omer's background, basically, he's got a background in DevOps, DevSecOps, and was a software developer first. So, and we're going to ask you about your background so you can kind of give us your, so we can kind of see how you ended up in security. But, you know, he's spoken at AppSec Cali at least a couple times. OWASP Poland, OWASP Israel, DevOps, all DevOps days, which was interesting to hear about that concept where it's online. And Omer was telling us how they shipped him a microphone and like this professional setup. But he's worked on Glue with Matt Konda and Kamus, which is what his AppSec Cali talk was about with Kubernetes secret management. So we're certainly going to get into that. That's one of the primary things we definitely want to talk about today. But yeah, thanks for joining us, Omer.
Thank you.
So let's get right into your, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in kind of being somewhat, well, not somewhat, being security focused?
Yeah, so like I'm writing code for a very long time. Actually, while you were talking about the .dev, I tried to remember, and I think I never saw something with .dev in like the last 10 years that I'm writing code, which maybe I don't do the cool things that everyone is doing. I don't know. Maybe it's my problem. So anyway, so I started as a coder, and I started to work at Soluto 4 years ago, and at some point, Assurance Security understood that they have R&D centers all around the globe, and they can't just do security for one place. So they started a security champion program. They like to call it security mavens. And I got the opportunity to join this program, and I took it with both ends, and this is how I started the journey into AppSec. It was 3 years ago, and I'm really happy about this decision. It was a really good journey, and I learned a lot of it, and a lot of help from OWASP and OWASP conference, and the local chapters, and a lot of projects. So this is like a high-level background.
Well, I have a question for you because, you know, I'd say that we've definitely had quite a few people that had kind of started more in software. And one question I always fail to ask, and we can ask you is, as you look back at some of the code that you've written, now that you're doing more security focused work and you've learned quite a bit more about application security and you know have that skill set, do you ever look back and think about some of the code you've written and been like, perhaps that wasn't as secure as it could have been, or does it open your eyes a little bit, or were you pretty much always kind of writing code with this security in mind?
Yeah, so I definitely have that. It's actually the way I get into the security champion is because I worked on a specific auth to flow for our mobile application. So it was like 4 to 5 months of a lot of, I didn't know it's called threat modeling, but it was a lot of threat modeling sessions and discussion and designing the solution and trying to find the most secure solution. And I was there from the developer part. And it was really interesting to look back on it and understand like what I was doing and what the security people who work with me on that were asking me and how all that is going on. So yeah, I have both of them. So yeah, it's definitely.
No, I mean, for what it's worth, like we've talked about this several times, having a secure code background and still writing insecure code, like definitely have done that before accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we do it purposefully from time to time too, right, Ken? Right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like I think back to my like development days, and And some of that code I know is just riddled with things like SQL injection, right? Granted, back in the day, the frameworks didn't do anything but, right? But I cringe to think of some of that running internally at an old job or something like that. There's others that I'm proud of, but there's some of it I'm like, I know I just threw that together, right? Yeah.
The main problem is that now every time that I write code, it needs to be perfect. Like I cannot write code that has any security vulnerability in it. So each time I'm trying to commit something, it's like, is it perfect? Can I push it? Because you need to be an example. You can't push a code that is not that has any security issue in it. So it's like has two sides.
Yeah, it's got to be efficient, functional, and secure, which is
it definitely does, right? So like I run into this all the time because we were talking about DEF CON before we started, right? And I do the Hacker Tracker app for DEF CON, which is like the conference app that has the schedule in it and all of that stuff. And we get so much crap from all the attendees about how we're tracking their location and X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, okay, I've got to do it. If I don't do it right, somebody's going to pick it apart, and I'm never going to hear the end of it, right? There's no way, right? Just destroy my reputation completely. It's kind of it's a fine line to walk, and internal in an organization, you run into that same thing, right? So if you're developing code and then trying to turn around and tell the developers that they do it wrong, if you do it wrong, like they're not going to trust you to tell them ever again, right?
Yeah. And again, it's also like we had this discussion now about a lot of security tools because I'm part of a team who also have services with issues. So like I keep pushing teams to fix their issues, but my team can't fix the issue in the services they own. So it's all get again and again to the same problem, like the dog feeding.
Yeah,
you get to do the things. So it's a really good experience. Like I think it's really important.
Yeah. So what languages are your background? What did you come up developing in?
So I started. My dad thought it's a good idea to teach me basic when I was in 4th grade. I don't know what he had in mind, but this is how I started, and it was really cool that he teach me basic. I don't remember a lot of basic, a bit VB, which I want to forget, but I can't.
Purge that. Yeah. Let's just purge that. Move on. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I moved on to C, C++, assembler, and then I finally get to normal things like C# and languages with garbage collector that you don't care if you forget to dispose something.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I know a lot of the background nowadays, right? If kids are going through school or whatever, right? They may get some Java or .NET, but I don't see as much C, C++. Maybe if they take like a compiler class or something like that, they may play at those lower levels and play with assembler or assembly. But I think in general, we've seen this switch to a lot of JavaScript, like Node developers and Rails developers, heaven forbid, or Python, which is much better than Rails. No, never mind.
I think
whatever.
It's a lot easier to start. Like if you let someone today start with C or C++, he will just get scared, and I don't want to do anything related to programming. And starting with Node.js or Python or .NET is far less frightening and get you to understand what is programming and not, hey, I forgot to dispose something. So I think it's better.
It's definitely easier to kind of learn those concepts, right? I think back to like the algorithm courses and things like that I did in college, and it was very C++ heavy, and there was a lot of debugging involved for sure. Where it was, but that's where you learn to actually debug that. So I can't discount how like valuable some of that is in my own brain. And then we saw a huge inrush. I'm not sure, like I kind of date myself, but I really got into the industry as there was a huge, like everyone's programming web pages, right? It was all just HTML, and there was the huge fight that everyone was a programmer because they could go in and do markup. And I'm like, no, that's not how this works. But so I don't know. I mean, there's no one true path for sure.
Yeah.
But I think your experience in C, C++, right? You probably, and assembly especially, I would imagine you understand exploits a lot better than somebody that's only done Node.js, right?
Yes, a bit more. Like, I cannot really program right now in assembler. I didn't do it like 10 years. But yeah, I still remember things like, I don't know, little endian, big endian, or these really weird issues that you don't want to face ever at your career.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's interesting though, because I don't think that's a requirement for, especially for application security. I'd much rather have a Node developer that knew how to program a web application and then is advising other Node developers on what the security issues are than, a C developer trying to come in and tell a Node developer, hey, you can't do that because you didn't clean up your, you didn't implement garbage collection or whatever it is. It's kind of a different skill set. Ken, I know your, programming background isn't necessarily like the institutional, schooling or whatever.
Yeah, mine was picking up a book and figuring it out and being confused a lot. And just what and for the record, like what I find, because this has come up before, we were like, people will ask, what's the best way to learn programming or something like that. And someone gave me this advice and I fully 100% believe it. When you have a reason to build something, when there's something you specifically have in mind, is when you then truly want to learn to program. At least that was the case for me. Yeah, because then you learn the foundational bits, and then after that you keep iterating and refactoring code, and maybe throw that away and build something cooler and keep going from there.
Yeah, I mean in school there's kind of a structured approach to that, but it definitely follows a similar path, right? We've got, here's a manual, here's a textbook that you use. It's just kind of the advisement. I think there's so many ways into AppSec nowadays that it's not a prerequisite, but it definitely, I don't know, like I go back and forth, right? There's advantages to both cases, because there's advantages to learning what the shortcuts are and what people do that are coming out of those 6-week JavaScript programming courses, because those are the same vulnerabilities that are going to show up in those production applications wherever they go.
Well, when I was in the Navy, I had gone to several schools. Schools for one was for like splicing terminating fiber optic cables and working with fiber optic cables. Got a certification out of that. Did a school on just purely like Alcatel switching and routing, Cisco. I went to a bunch of courses, and one thing like I'll say is I'm glad I learned programming the way I did, because in those courses, there was stuff that I worked with every day that when they explained it on a whiteboard or in a PowerPoint presentation, it didn't really, like, I knew what they were talking about just because of my experience, but when I was thinking about it, I'm like, this sounds so abstract and not something that you can really apply. And like, if I had learned programming in a classroom, the difficulty there is like, okay, why do I need an array? What the hell is an array? How do you explain that to somebody? What's a hash? Basic stuff now, but stuff at the time that's like, when you're building code to do something, you think about it as like, oh, I've got these, I've got 17 values. I need to iterate through each one and do something on them. And then you're like, well, how do I do that? What's the best way to do that? And then you find out, oh, like arrays, like, cool, I get that. I shove it into this block and I can just iterate through this block. And it's just, when you have a practical purpose for something, I find that it's easier. It's less abstract and it's more like, okay, here's what I need. And so for me, that was useful. Just picking up books and writing tools I wanted to learn. But anyways, enough about us. I did want to ask Omer how he got involved in the Glue project with Matt Konda.
So let me do just a quick introduction about Glue, just in case not everyone know what it is. So Glue is an OWASP project. I don't need to explain what OWASP is, right? Or it's better to say a word about it?
Right? Yeah, no, everybody is familiar with OWASP, hopefully.
No, because I had some situation where not everyone know what OWASP is. So Glue is an OWASP project that has one purpose. It aims to solve the hard problem of gluing security tools into the pipeline. And I'm sure that if you ever work with like any security tool that you can name, it was very hard to integrate it into the pipeline, make sure it's break the build, and give you an easy way to ignore false positive, because there is always false positive. So Glue aims to solve all these issues. And I don't remember how I heard about Glue, but like when I heard about it, I tried to use it. And like I worked a lot of integrated it into our pipeline. For example, I wanted to do something with Nmap, like use Nmap to enumerate all the ciphers on the server, or the TLS ciphers. So Nmap will fail the build if there is any weak cipher. So Nmap can do that, but to glue Nmap into the pipeline, you need Glue. So this was a good example of uses of Glue. I think I do it with Glue. Like, okay, let's say I do it with Glue. Anyway, this is how I ended up involved with Glue, and I really believe in this project. Because if you can't connect the security tools into the pipeline, you didn't do anything. Like, it's useless. And I hope
you need to be able to, if something changes, to consistently be able to run the same set of tests when you make a change.
Test. Like, if you run a test but you didn't break the build, no one will know. It's like a tree fallen in the forest that no one hears. So it's not enough to have like something in the CI that produce reports, because again, you cannot expect developers to say, hey, there is a build here that is green. Let's see if there is a report there. No one will do that. Once the build is broken, people start care.
Yeah, I find it a strange. So Glue in and of itself, in the explanation that you're having, or like what it is, it's a CI/CD tool, right? That'll spawn a security tool and then pass or fail the build depending on what the results of that security tool are, right? And so it sounds like you worked on the Nmap integration. Are there other tools that that you're using from the Glue project, or that you're integrating?
So I'm using mainly Zap and Glue integration, make it a lot easier to connect Zap into the pipeline. Actually, one of the last things I worked on in Glue is dynamic task, which means that now if your tool produce JSON, you can provide a file that say how to take the JSON output of your file and pass it into Glue. So now adding a new tool to Glue is like just mapping of JSON. You don't need to add code to Glue. And it's make it a lot easier to connect new tools. Until I added this feature, to add a new tool to Glue, add the new integration, you had to open a PR, wait for a review, and you know how these things are going. Now you don't need that. You can integrate new tools into Glue without even opening a PR, and it's make it a lot easier like to use Glue, because there are a lot of niche tools out there that I don't want their code to be in Glue, but can be useful to connect with Glue.
Nice. So before, if you wanted to make a change to Glue, to add some tool, which would mean added functionality to Glue, you actually had to change Glue's code. You'd have to submit a pull request and get that merged into the master branch of Glue. And now what you're saying is the tool, it doesn't matter what you want to plug into Glue. You can download that code. Don't have to make any changes on the master branch of Glue. You just make some changes locally, and you can tie in the new tool you want to add.
As long as your tool can produce JSON report, like there is a way to feed Glue with this JSON report, and Glue can do magics on it. You just need to tell to Glue, oh, this is the array of the finding in the JSON, and from the JSON I want this and this and this. And this
why
is
JSON? Why JSON over XML? That's a joke. Sorry. I'm serious.
Why JSON over YAML?
Why Python over Rails? Right. That's
no .NET. No, none of these languages.
No hipster languages. Just
no. Wait. That's mine.
Only .NET. Stop using weird languages that no one.
Only .NET. I don't know. Ken may be on board. No, the whole Microsoft connection now that works.
Sure. Yeah. Why not? Go for it. Go for it, folks.
No, .NET Core is really amazing. Like the phase that Microsoft was doing in the last 2 years of open sourcing and the entire C#, it was an amazing move. And .NET is a really, really strong language, and you can do a lot of cool things with it that you can't do in other languages. I'm really happy.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just it. Like I know I give .NET a lot of crap, but most of my experience with it was back in the day when it was just them in Java, and like the .NET Core stuff is it's slick, right? And even their, I mean, they bought GitHub because it's GitHub, and the Visual Studio Code, and like they've done quite a bit from a developer tooling perspective. Yeah. As much as it pains me, I do have to give them props. So
yeah.
So are you mainly developing in .NET then? That's what I'm hearing.
Well, like you get to a point, like after enough years of programming, you can, like most of the programming languages are pretty much the same. You just need a bit Google to understand how to do for each in the specific languages. So I do a lot of things. Like the tool that is most easiest for me is .NET. But I can do others. Kamus, written mainly in .NET, like the backend, which was a very interesting choice because, everyone doing Golang right now, and developing something especially to Kubernetes in .NET was not the common choice. I'm happy with it, but, I think it might make others don't want to contribute code because, again, it's not like the language that everyone is using.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Glue itself is Ruby, right? Yeah.
I'm trying to. Have you guys had any experience with GoSec?
GoSec?
The tool. Yeah, the tool GoSec.
No, never heard about it.
I've used it a couple times. I'm trying to evaluate if anybody has any other tools for Golang to do open source security or open source static analysis. Please send it our way. But GoSec is the one that I shall paste the link in.
Yeah, it's
GoSec's the one I'm looking at.
Yeah, the world of is always interesting.
On that front, I mean, since you are a .NET guy, we'll get into Kamus in a second, right? Like the Kubernetes Secrets stuff. I'm sure there's going to be people that have questions about that. But one of the things that I consistently run into, like Ken's talking about, is security tooling for languages, right? On the .NET side, what have you used for just like static analysis or security testing, or has it been all manual?
So actually, we're currently using checkmarks as the SaaS solution, and it's interesting. I think there is Pumascan that is like a commercial solution. Microsoft has a really good open source called Devskin. I can put it on the Slack. It's a really nice open source by Microsoft. It's an IDE integration, and it's a really good IDE integration because it can tell you in the IDE what you are doing wrong, and it's even more powerful than that because it can fix the issues for you. Like if you use HTTP instead of HTTPS, he will show you like this is not good, and then you can click and tell it, oh, fix it for me, and you just move from HTTP to HTTPS, and it's really, really powerful.
Nice. So, I just pulled it from the Microsoft GitHub, or we'll drop it in. Oh yeah, you already did. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks awesome. I mean, just the fact that it supports more than just Visual Studio.
Yeah, it supports VS Code, and I think it also supports Atom or Sublime. It supports Sublime, and it supports some languages, and writing rules for it is really easy. So I really love it. I don't use it a lot because it's installed on my VS Code, but it's not more than that.
Yeah. No, that's incredibly useful. That's exactly what I was looking for, is kind of what's in use by developers of these languages nowadays, right? Like GoSec for Golang. I mean, Devskin. We've had Eric on, who's the prime developer on Pumascan before. So they've got that open source version, but I know that's very specific to kind of the .NET Core side of things, or the ASP.NET side of things, but it works pretty well. But Devskin looks really interesting as well, from a .NET but other languages perspective also.
Yeah, that one's new to me. I appreciate the giving us that bit of information. That one's completely new to me. I've never heard of it. Never heard of it. So
yeah. Now I'm jumping down rabbit holes. So
Yeah, actually, again, what I like the most about Devskin is the fact that it's really easy to write rules for it. Not a lot of SaaS engines make it easy to write rules, and if you can't write rules, you can't extend the SaaS tool. And Devskin make it really easy. So yeah, it's like amazing open source for Microsoft.
Awesome.
Yeah,
so Seth, I don't know if you wanted to switch gears to talk a little bit about Kamus.
yeah, we should. I mean, we're already a half hour into this, so let's switch over to Kubernetes a little bit rather than.
And I'm posting the slides to Omer's talk, but if you could expand, tell us a little bit about your AppSec Cali talk, about the solution, how it came about, and how it's implemented and everything.
I'm also posting the blog post because I guess it will be easier to read it. So just put the link to the blog post. So I guess, as you already know, keeping secret is important. Like, you don't want someone have access to your secrets because, database credentials, API keys, whatever. And Kubernetes doesn't make it easy. Like, Kubernetes has a native solution, Kubernetes Secrets, but it's nice, and they put a lot of effort on making it secure, and they really put a lot of efforts, like making sure it's only on the nodes that need it, and a lot of mitigations to protect it. But it has one problem, which is Getups. Like, if you want to do Kubernetes secrets in Getups manner, it's really hard because the YAML, the manifest files, are base64 encoded, and you don't want to put something that is base64 encoded in Git repository. It's not really good. So we faced this issue like it was a year ago. After we did a lot of effort of helping people to make it easier to deploy code to Kubernetes, and we did a lot of effort around Helm and a lot of that. And everything started to play, and people started to use Kubernetes. And then we get to the point of, you need secrets, because you need secrets for almost everything. And we really didn't know what to do. And we started to look on solutions. So there are some solutions to create encrypted versions of Kubernetes secrets, like sealed secret or Helm secret. By they both imperfect. Sealed secret is a very popular open source by Bitnami, I think, if I remember correctly.
That sounds right, yeah.
It has one big small problem, depend on how much you care. The encryption is done by one keeper that is stored on the cluster, which I think is not that good choice from a security point of view, like no protections on the keys and stuff like that. And Helm secret is coupling to Helm, and I didn't want to do couple to Helm because we might decide one day to stop using Helm, and then we need to encrypt everything. So these are the popular solutions, and there was no one that we can use. So we started to look on the Vault integration, HashiCorp Vault, which is also nice, but it's not GitOps solution. It's really good, it's very secure, but A, you need Vault if you don't have Vault yet, and B, it's not GitOps solution, which is not what we wanted, and it's add another component that you need to protect and do RBAC to that component and all that. So we just make things more complex if you don't have Vault already. And then we were pretty confused. Like, I remember me thinking pretty desperate because I looked all over Google and there was nothing that I feel I can use. And one day, actually, while working on Glue, Glue is using Travis. And if you ever worked with Travis, Travis has a really cool solution for secrets. It's basically create public key for every repository, and then you can use this public key to encrypt secret only for this repository. So only can Travis decrypt them. It's really awesome, and they did it really easy with the CLI, and it's secure enough to be stored to store the secret encrypted on public GitHub repository. Because again, they generate key per repository. And I saw it and I was thinking, maybe I can do something similar for Kubernetes. And this is how Kamus created. So Travis was the main inspiration. Basically, Kamus let you encrypt a secret for a specific application on Kubernetes. This was like the main threat model. You encrypt a secret once, and no one can decrypt it beside the application. And this is what, on one hand, simplified the security significantly, because there is no walls, everything is flattened, and everyone have the same permissions. And the other hand, gives something that is useful and secure and Getups friendly and all that. So this is the high-level overview.
So the main reason that I typically, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the main reason that you don't, well, I think there's always the chance that, you know, someone gets access to like a laptop that has the source code, or somehow gets access to the source code, whether it's leaked accidentally or it's, like I said, like a stolen laptop or malware on a laptop, and they go rummaging around and find the source code. Is that the main threat model that you're trying to protect against, or are there other things that you're trying to protect against with this?
So what I was trying to protect is I want to have an easy solution that will allow everyone to use Getups and create secrets easily and encrypt them. And I want to decrease significantly the attack surface. So if you like have RBAC, so people have permissions to decrypt and stuff like that, you need to start thinking it's add more, it's increase the attack surface. So Kamus let you decrease it significantly because the secret can be decrypted only in two places: on the computer on the developers who create the secret, and hopefully she will remember to delete it, and on the pod itself on Kubernetes. So you have far less things to worry about, and this was the main thinking and behind the design.
Understood. So are there any other, besides secrets, are there, Seth, did you drop off?
Sorry, connection issues, so hopefully it's solved itself now.
Sorry about that. All right, I lost track of what I was asking you. When did you develop Kamus? How long has this been out?
So we developed it like it's in production, I think, since last July. Like I finished it right before my daughter was born, and I was off to parental leave. So it was like last July. So it's in Soluto in production for I think 8 months, and it's open source since January. And we had a lot of traffic. We get like more than 100 stars in the last month, and we hope to see more traffic. We currently mainly want to see more users using it. And the idea behind Kamus is that the encryption is done by pluggable encryption solutions. So currently we support Azure Key Vault and Google GCP, and of course in-memory AES key. Both Azure Key Vault and Google GCP give you HSM protections, which is Google KMS. And so they both give you HSM, and Azure also give you IP filtering. So these are really, really good protections, and to help ensure that these sensitive keys that you use to encrypt the secret are state secure. And we do hope to add AWS soon. And we would like to have...
I mean, one thing I was trying to, can you further expand upon because you had said that using something like, because people are like, well, you know, why not Vault or Azure's Key Vault or something like that? You said it's not a GitOps solution. Can you expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah. So as you said, you can use Vault or Azure Key Vault or AWS SSM or whatever. There are a lot of good solutions out there, but using this solution, meaning that you need to have a flow where the developer who create the service and deploy it and all that need also now to put the secrets on this thing, on this vault, and manage them there, and the service need to pull it from there. So now you have two sources of truth to what exists in production, the vault and the deployment files, and you need to look on both of them. And I always prefer Getups because Getups give you one source of truth, which is Git, and everything is happened through there. And like if a new developer comes to the team and she wants to know what is going on or what is in production or stuff like that, she needs to understand one thing. Also, if you start thinking about how you model RBAC, like resource-based access control, so you need to give all the developers access to write to this vault. And you also need to give them permissions to, because if a developer now needs to create a new service, so the developer will also need to grant permissions to this service to read from the vault. So either you have another person in the company who manages like access to the vault, or you need to give developers permissions to create service account for their service or stuff like that. And it's get really messy really fast. And I just didn't want to get into all these challenges. And I prefer to develop something that is Getups. And again, the idea behind Kamus is be like a small, tiny wrapper behind Azure Key Vault or Google KMS or even Vault encryption as a service. We might add that in the future if someone sees it as a valuable. We can add it. It's like 3 hours adding a new plugin.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound like because when you started just talking about some basic pieces of doing some management, I mean, we talk about role-based access control or having a person who is helping essentially control these secrets, and you get it in several places. It's versus like what it sounds like is just, here's a single source of truth. It's in the Git repo, and that's all you need. Well, the developer knows the secret, and this can be used once deployed out of that single source of truth. So that's an easy, or sorry, not easy. That's well, it's easier to manage, certainly less complex, but it's some of the best solutions are the most simple ones. So very nice.
And, like keep it simple. KISS.
Yeah, no, it's a good principle. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Seth, do you have anything to add there? I know you. I asked because I know your network connectivity had, or you were experiencing some network issues.
Yeah, I am. I'm sorry about that, guys. I don't know what's going on.
Is this a good time to rail on Comcast?
Yeah, that's just what I was going to do. Like nothing changes, and all of a sudden my network drops out from underneath me. Yay!
We have a provider here, Omer, and the Comcast, and they're like one of the worst providers, and I think Seth stuck with them.
Like I'm happy to hear that because
normally it works okay, but
yeah.
What?
I'm now connected on my 3G, like on my phone, because I know I have a lot of internet connection on my cable at home. So I'm happy to hear that it's not only me in Israel that have network issues, like in 2019.
No, it's not. It's not. Not at all. Yeah, I mean, so in general, you've had good success rolling out Kamus across the board. Like, what are some of the issues that you've run into trying to implement that? That other people will may see the same problems.
You're asking like what the issues we faced when we decided that make us develop Kamus?
Yeah.
Like what lessons learned.
So I keep getting to the same point of GitOps. The way we work at Soluto, I like to call it super devs. It's developers who do everything. We write the code, but we also responsible of deploying to production and also monitoring the service, like the one who carries the pager and all that. There is no like tiers at Soluto. So when you have that super devs, you need to give them easy tools that will help them do their work. And GitOps make a lot of sense here. Because again, you have everything on GitHub that everyone know what GitHub is. Like half my workday is on GitHub. And you have easy review, and you have easy versioning and audit and all that. And this is why I wanted from the first place to have a secure GitOps flow end-to-end. You just put something in GitHub. And it's more than that. I also wanted an easy way to know what changed. One of the way that if you're still using Kubernetes Secrets, a lot of people ended up doing the following. You have like JSON with all the sensitive configuration, You take all this JSON, do base64 encode of it, and you put this in a secret. So you have one key in Kubernetes secret, and the value of this key is this encoded JSON. You can imagine that?
Yeah.
Okay. So once you have that, editing this JSON is cumbersome and open because you need to do base64 the code, modify, add a new key or whatever, and then encode back and put it. And it also makes it really hard to understand what changed, and it can create a lot of errors in the way. And this is why I wanted to create a solution where you can see easily what key changed, not what values, but you can understand that, I don't know, yesterday, Shalom changed the connection string, and like 4 months ago, Mira changed the value of the API keys, or stuff like that. So you can see what key changed, but not the value. And this was like the solution I wanted to end up with, and this is what we have with Kamus.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it definitely feels a need for like abstracting that out and doing it in a, easy way to understand what's going on with those secrets, right?
I think it's
sorry. Yeah. So at this point, how many like, how big is the install? Like, how many secrets are you currently managing with it? Across the board, is that kind of middleware solution?
So currently, I know only on us that are using it, and this is why I'm trying to like talk about it, like with everyone who let me talk about it, because again, I think it has some advantage and of course some disadvantage related to other tools that are existing out there. So we do get traction. We have almost 200 stars on GitHub, and if you can help us get to 200, it will make us happy. But we hope to see more users, or at least hear why people don't want to use it, because it will help us understand why. And we also like trying to add a lot of new features, for example, CRD. If you have, like, I don't know, you want TLS secrets for Prometheus, so we want to have like Kamus secrets, so you can create Kamus secret using Kamus, and behind the scene you will have Kubernetes secret regularly that you can use for third-party charts that you are not managing. So this is one of the things we want to work on to make Kamus even more usable. And like in the end goal, I see Kamus as something that can live outside of Kubernetes. For example, if you have a function, a Lambda running on an AWS, this Lambda has an identity, and you can encrypt a secret specifically for this Lambda and use Kamus the same way that you use it on Kubernetes. But this is like the end state of Kamus, where it can go, because this area of secret management is not solved. It's not easy at all, and there is no good Getups solution that works everywhere. And I hope one day Kamus will get there. I think it can go there, but like we need a lot of more help from people to get there.
Well, so if you can contribute, please do then to the project, not just use it. But that's the interesting thing with open source, is always trying to get people to actually. I don't think that it's not. Well, I guess it could be, but I find that it's not as hard to get people to use or test out kick the tires on something you've built, so much as getting issues and PRs submitted for your project. That whole contributing back, that's always a little bit more difficult. And actually, not to get too far off the topic, but you are starting to see people, on GitHub actually put ways to contribute and do like sort of a, similar to what Ubuntu does. If you try to download the source, it says, "Hey, would you like to donate?" So you're starting to see some more of that. But that's open source difficulties are probably a whole other talk for a different day. Seth, we're probably we're going to probably start wrapping up soon. Are there any thoughts? Like, one of the things I did want to,
Sorry, I'm back again.
I think we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. But one thing I did want to mention is your blog post, which I thought was really interesting, because I think it was like a week ago, Seth and I were on Grumpy Hackers, which is it's not a. I don't think they advertise it too much, but it is a podcast. They cover everything though: AppSec, incident response, network security, DevOps. One of the things we were talking about on there is like this whole idea of infrastructure as code and how it's merging traditional network security responsibilities with AppSec responsibilities. And I noticed you had written a blog post on this topic, so I'm going to go ahead and share that out. And you actually it looked like you were trying to come up with a solution like threat modeling as code, is sort of how I interpreted that, Omer.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty hot topic right now. If you were at AppSec Cali, there were like 3 or 4 talks there that touch different areas of threat modeling of code. There was one good talk about how you do continuous threat modeling by Izar Tarandach, and I probably mispronounced his name, so Izar, I'm really, really sorry. But he did a really good talk at AppSec Cali about continuous threat modeling and how they do continuous threat modeling at Autodesk. And part of it, he mentioned PyTM, which is a framework they developed for threat modeling as code. And this is something I'm evaluating right now, and I hope it will be useful for us. But yeah, definitely, if you're into threat modeling, this is what's going on now. And of course, come to our threat modeling channel if you're not there yet, because all the good things happen there.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, no, I mean it's interesting because I think it's cool to make this sort of an easier process to do, but also it just sort of some of the things you talk about, like with Adam Showstock's work in that area of threat modeling, and just the whole infrastructure as code approach to threat modeling, to building infrastructure. It's all fairly interesting to see how that shift is occurring. So
Yeah.
it plays into that single source of truth that we've been talking about for the last half hour with GitOps. And I'm not saying that because I work for GitHub. I'm saying that because it doesn't matter if it's GitHub, it's a Git repo. It's nice to have that single source of truth. Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Look at me. I'm talking about .NET and Git. How surprising.
There you go. And so it begins. The interesting thing that I find in that is that like anytime that we switch from a manual process to a more automated process, like exactly what you're doing, like, and I need to look more into the threat modeling stuff that you've been like proposing, because it definitely affects how we approach everything from, hey, what secure code reviews do we do? What kind of architecture do we build? Like threat modeling is kind of that initial, hey, what's going on with this application? How do we enter into it? And how do we actually start analyzing it from a security perspective? So the more automated that we can make that, probably the better off we're going to be up front. So like, I mean, I know we've kind of touched it on the surface, but like, what can you give us a short, just TLDR, like short description of what you're proposing with threat modeling as code and how someone would go about that?
So you can see an example in Kamus. We released Kamus with an open source threat modeling. I can put the link later, but on Kamus repository, there is a full threat modeling in BDD format. BDD is behavior-driven development, and it's actually in a language called Jerkin, which lets you write features or user story. So you can do things like, as an hacker, I want to get all the secrets or stuff like that. And we use Jerkin to document the output of the threat modeling we do. So this is one side of threat modeling as code, when you use code to document the threat modeling. And there are some work out there to create from this Jerkin stuff automated security test, but this is like a totally different subject. And the other side is using code to generate the chart, the diagram. So I like to use PlantUML, and it's also on Kamus repository. We have one file that describes the flow, and on this file you can see like the full flow, and using PlantUML you can generate from this file the full threat modeling, the full diagram. Yeah, and I think you find it. It's a good example.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, that would be really helpful from a just like planning perspective. All right, we've got a new project or we want to do a threat model. How do we actually implement that in a code perspective that's not, I mean, that honestly, that's not an Excel spreadsheet, right? Like that's everybody's solution for threat modeling is an Excel spreadsheet. And it's just not, it's so hard to analyze from a an automated perspective.
And hopefully you can see this. This is, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I wanted to say just one sentence. Kamus is a really sensitive project, and if I was a user, I wanted to know why I should trust it. And this is why we decided to release the open source. The threat modeling is open source, and I hope to see more and more open source projects releasing their own threat modeling, so I can read the threat modeling and see what they were thinking on, and I can contribute new threats if they didn't think about it, and stuff like that. And this is because we care a lot about security, and we want to make Kamus secure. So this was the main motivation behind including threat modeling in a repository, which is very rare. I don't think I see a lot of, I can't think now of an open source I see that includes a threat modeling in it. And again, this is something I hope to see changed.
Yeah, I mean, I see that as more useful than the whole security.txt file that people are trying to drop on domains, right? If we know what the actual threats are in code. The most that I've seen up to this point, and I'm looking at those feature files now, but the most I've seen in other projects is maybe something in the docs that maybe talks a little bit about it, but it's usually, oh, well, we want to make sure that, cross-site scripting isn't an issue, so X, Y, and Z, right? Not the full-blown, hey, we did a full threat model, and these are all the threats that we're seeing, and that's very interesting.
I think it's imperfect, and we should work on making it more readable. I tried to play with how I can generate a web page from it, like GitHub web page from it. I just don't have enough time to keep investing in that. But I do look for feedback on how we can make it more readable. We just put all the threats and mitigations we can think of, and we still have security MD because, if you can think of a new threat that we didn't think of, please don't open a PR. Use security MD to report it to us securely. So I think you need the combinations of both of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic.
No, that's a good thing. So sorry, go ahead, Ken.
No, I was going to try and screen share real quick just so that someone could get a visual of what we're talking. If I can figure out where I put it, hold on. So that should be a pretty good example, where you've got a feature, what it's supposed to do, the scenario outline, examples of data types there, and it's just it almost reads like, in some sense, it almost reads kind of like unit testing in a way.
It's coming from BDD. If you're familiar with BDD, so BDD is exactly that. You use natural language or something that is close to natural language. And actually, I need to mention here Father Scott, that if you don't hear about Father Scott or Stoda0x10 on Twitter, he's the person behind OWASP Cloud Security Project, which is an amazing OWASP project doing the same thing just for AWS and Azure. So you have a GitHub repository with, currently it's only AWS, but a lot of threats and mitigation in the same format. I took the format from Fraser, and he helped me a lot in writing it. But you have the same thing for cloud. So I just need to give him credit because it's the inspiration here, and I think it's amazing.
Awesome, thank you. This is really interesting stuff. I mean, honestly, these things are sort of new to me, and I would assume so of some of our viewers for sure. So this has been incredibly helpful. I really like this because I especially this threat modeling as code. I hadn't seen this yet, so it's really awesome. And we appreciate you sharing that with us. So we're gonna start wrapping things up. We're a little over an hour now. Seth, was there anything you wanted to chat about before we start closing out?
Not necessarily. Obviously, we've posted all the links to Kamus and Devskin and everything else that we've talked about today. The threat modeling stuff, like Ken was saying, that seems super useful to me, right? Like actually just having a format to push that out that is somewhat standardized. So we'll take a look at that. So Omer, thank you once again for coming on. Thank you for participating. This is great, and we'll keep talking about Kamus and let us know how things progress with it. So on that same note, is there anywhere, how can people interact with you, like Twitter, or are there any other conferences that you'll be at in the future?
So currently only things in Israel. I submitted to KubeCon, Kamus, and I really hope to get accepted, but it's KubeCon. So finger crossed. So yeah, Twitter is the best place. I have my DMs open, and also I'm on so many Slacks, like I'm in Kubernetes Slack, OWASP Slack, CNCF Slack. Now I'm on absoluteappsec Slack. So just find me on one of these Slacks. And if someone have any questions about Kamus, just feel free to ping me. I will be more than happy to help people set it up, hear what is not working, why they can't use it. Just tell me everything.
Awesome. Well, and even more so than, thanking you for coming on the podcast. Appreciate the open source contributions. It's if you've never had to build an open source project and maintain it and try to get people to contribute and try to get people to use it, I'll just say that it's a difficult, sometimes, I almost want to say alienating or lonely endeavor. But for those that use it, it's greatly appreciated. So thank you for that as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, I just wanted to say thank you. I really enjoyed the last hour. It was a really good conversation.
Yeah, it was very informative. It really was. It's very informative. So, I mean, for me personally, it's very informative. I was just going to say, when we end the podcast, please don't jump off right away. We'll stop the broadcast for everyone else, but don't jump off just right at that. Awesome. So is there anything else you wanted to leave anyone with, Omer? Anything else to say before we go?
No, just if you can give us a star on GitHub. If you hear us and you enjoyed the podcast, we will really appreciate it. And that's it. Thank you, and have a great day, night, evening, whatever, depending on your time zone.
Well, I just gave you a star, so
Thank you.
There you go. You got a couple extra stars just right now. Yeah. Honestly, we really appreciate it. The whole reason that we do this podcast is so that we discover new things as well. So this has been, for me as well, it's been great to actually, there's a couple new tools, there's more to try out. Constantly learning is a great thing. So thank you again. Outside of that, Ken, I don't think there's anything else to announce right now. Find us on Twitter. I'll get the podcast put together for iTunes and Google Play and Spotify here shortly, and we'll push that out probably later this evening. So watch for it, and I'll tweet out about it once it's there. So
yeah, and you and I can discuss timing as well. Like maybe if this is a better time for people, I don't know. We could play around with it if we need to. So we'll see.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay,
great.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
All right, bye.